Hey vinyl community, what's going on? It's LJ, and this is a response to Bret, Life on This Planet blog is his channel name, thread about album closers or the best album closing songs. This was a really, really cool and unique thread idea, Bret. Before I get going, I did pull out some albums to show you, but it gave me a chance to kind of not just go back through. I like threads that make you hit the records, hit the shelves, and go through and say, is that a good one? Is that a good one for this? Inevitably, I end up pulling some out to put in the on deck or next to listen to, and also inevitably I end up with a shit ton of albums to put away. So Bret, scurry on back up here and give me a hand. And I think for all threads in the future, anybody that's responsible for us pulling out dozens of albums, mostly because we cheat and have to show more than one, should also participate in helping to put them away. And that might force some VC hookups, which is pretty cool. Travel might be difficult. Where this was interesting was, you know, Bret, like you said in your thread, and I'll get to this in a second, you're a fan of sequencing and a member of a band, so you give a lot of thought to sequencing. I've also always been convinced that, you know, sequencing is a big factor in the overall success of an album. Of course it is. You know, bands, engineers, and producers don't just lob it on there, however, but it's really meaningful. Anyway, going back through them, I've really noticed that there were some bands that were just really freaking good at sequencing their albums, and there were some that really suck. There were some great albums that the last track actually ruins it for me. Def Leppard Hysteria is one of them. I always kill that at the last song. Can't stand it. The rest of the record is great. That was one example. And there were a couple others that it's like, man, that is actually a really bad closing tune. And, you know, a lot of documentaries we've all seen. Oh, that was the last song. We threw it on there and it ended up in last place. Who knows, whatever. I do have a stack here. I'm going to run through them right quick. To avoid repeating it 18 million times, all of these last songs I think are epic. And in one way or another, they kind of, they pull the album together. Maybe I'll say a few things about some of them, but probably not all. Anyways, here we go. In no particular order, here is the soundtrack to the movie Once. Say It To Me Now is the last track on side 2. It closes the album. And why it's so epic, it just ties the album together. The album is a flurry of emotion. Not different styles, but emotion. And Say It To Me Now is kind of a rough song with some rough vocals, but after taking in the whole album, perfect closer. Rio, the chauffeur, right? The chauffeur. A very stark, cold song, almost doesn't belong on this playful album whatsoever. After watching the documentary and how the album was made, though, a lot of input on why it went in, and it really brought me full circle with this song. I never really understood the chauffeur until I saw that documentary. It was one of those last-minute songs. Anybody listening off Queensryche's Empire. Just an absolute epic, full-out, in-your-face song that just, it pleads and it ties the entire album together. I think I might say that a lot. Because the same is true with Snow Patrol's Eyes Open, one of my favorite records of all time. I love this album. The finish line, this album's full of great songs, but the finish line, while it's not my favorite song, and that was another thing I really learned through this thread, was it might not be your favorite song, and it might not even be the single that you play, but in the context of the whole album, and maybe that's what you were getting at, Bret, it ties it all together. In this case, it's one of my favorite songs on the album, Rust in Peace, Polaris, from Megadeth's Rust in Peace. This is one track I look forward to. As I'm listening to the album, I can't wait to get to the last song, Polaris, to hear it, because it's just, and then when you're done, it's like, wow, shit, woo, that's why I spend 20 bucks on this. Do you know what I mean? Let's keep going. Prince, Sign of the Times. This ends with Adore. Adore, again, not my favorite song, but in the context of the entire album, once you've gone through things like Starfish and Coffee and the Ballad of Dorothy Parker, If I Was Your Girlfriend, by the time you get to Adore, it all makes sense. Masterminding sequencing here. Michael Jackson's Bad. It's just, first of all, it's a greatest hits album more than anything, the way it plays, but any album that ends with, it kind of takes you up and down, pop, rock, ballad, but then it just ends with a Smooth Criminal. I mean, which is Smooth Criminal just never lets up. And by the time it's done, it's like, wow. Wow. Other end of the spectrum. Here is Joshua Tree, Mothers of the Disappeared. I always say disheartened. Mothers of the Disappeared. Again, not my favorite song, but once you're done with the album, it's you get it. You get where that song's coming from. I'm sorry, I should say The Wall is playing in the background. I'm sure everybody got that already, so I won't hold that one up. Which is another one that wasn't a choice because of how it ends. Spandau Ballet, True, which ends with the same track, just an absolute epic song. Why this is because it plays in its original form, not in a radio edit. Big Country's The Crossing. This is one of my favorite synth pop, new wave-ish albums that I own. This ends with a song called Poro Man. I think I'm pronouncing that right, Poro Man. Which is just absolutely amazing. Big Country's The Crossing is easily one of my favorite albums that I own. All of these are worthy of checking out. Bret, I believe you showed this one. This is Who's Next, which ends with Won't Get Fooled Again. Fantastic choice. UFO's Lights Out ends with Love to Love. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal song. Takes you on a total ride. Love to Love is a great track. Let me adjust the lighting. Hopefully that's better. Still trying to get the lighting right in the new setup. Seeger and the Silver Bullet Band, Against the Wind. Again, this brought out some interesting choices. Shining Brightly, or Shining Brightly, is an interesting end to an album that really goes through a lot of different emotions. Against the Wind, You'll Accompany Me is on side one, which is one of my favorite Seeger songs. And this one kind of rides the roller coaster of Heartland America emotion. And ends on a big positive note with Shining Brightly, and I always like that about that album. Rush Signals, same thing, ending on a very different emotion than the rest of the album with the song Countdown. Fantastic. REO Speedwagon's REO 2, which ends with Golden Country. And that is just a raucous good time and a good end to a great album. It just never let up the whole way through. Here is my favorite Rat album, Invasion of Your Privacy, which ends with Dangerous but Worth the Risk. Again, it's one of those ones that I just look forward to at the end of the album. Pink Floyd's A Momentary Lapse of Reason did make the cut for Sorrow, which closes the album, and it's an album that Floyd fans land on different sides of the fence with. Personally, I love it. I love the history behind it, I love the stories behind it, and I love the way it ebbs and flows and the way it closes. As a whole, this album plays beautifully. You know, I know Dogs of War, Learning to Fly are great songs and they work as singles, but the album just works beautifully as a whole. And if there's anybody that just kind of falls into the singles on that one, give it a shot. You might be surprised. Here is Blizzard of Oz, which ends with Steal Away the Night. And Steal Away the Night is same thing. It's just an epic end to an epic album, and it leaves no question that I'll be back. And sure enough, he was with Diary of a Madman. Motley Crue's Too Fast for Love concludes with On With the Show. On With the Show, while not the best song in history by a long shot, it's the perfect end to this album and sums up kind of the LA glam sleaze scene at the time. It's almost foolish, to be completely honest with you, but it's a great end to this album. As is Glad Tidings from Moondance, just a fantastic, very Irish sounding song. It's not even one of my favorite songs, but again, one of the interesting spins on this thread, I have to admit, that Glad Tidings, while it's not the single that I'll play, brilliantly closes Moondance. Joni Mitchell's Clouds ends with Both Sides Now, Blue being my favorite Joni Mitchell album. However, I have to give it to Clouds for ending with Both Sides Now, for kind of tying the whole album together. Not to mention it's been sung at like 7 bazillion weddings over the years. On with the show. Here is Continuum by John Mayer. I don't believe this is the case on CD, so here's an interesting spin, Bret. On vinyl, Continuum ends with Say. I don't believe that's the case on CD. I believe it ends with I'm Gonna Find Another You. If that was the case, I wouldn't have chosen it. There's a lot of great blues inflicted music on this album. But on vinyl, Say, towards the end of it all, towards the end of Continuum, you're kind of like, I mean, you're done. You're blue. Mission accomplished. And here, in this case, it was interesting to hear Say bundled with it because it picks you back up. Do you know what I mean? And kind of gets you on your way. It doesn't leave you after the album saying, life is miserable, world must end. It say kind of, alright, I'm good. Anyways, Kiss ends with Black Diamond. What an absolutely amazing song. And for a band, if that was their first album and they ended it that way, wow. Wow, 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 wow. Devil's Child from Judas Priest, Screaming for Vengeance. It doesn't let up any more than any of the entire album did, which was Never for a Second. Brilliant close. Very even and amazing album. Surrealistic Pillow from Jefferson Airplane ends with Plastic Fantastic Lover. My favorite song from the album, beyond Embryonic Journey. Plastic Fantastic Lover closes it out in fine style. So this is a stereo copy, and because it was on the shelf, here's a mono copy of the same album. And another interesting point, one album that sounds tremendously different, mono versus stereo. I'm usually not a big mono versus stereo guy. You know, these old ears just can't do it. Here they can. Unreal. Absolutely unbelievable differences between the two. Here is Halloween, and here is Halloween Judas. Why two? Because they both end with Cry for Freedom. Cry for Freedom is an amazing track. Keeper of the Seven Keys almost made the list, but it's Cry for Freedom. If I'm going to listen to a couple of Halloween tunes, I'll play Cry for Freedom. And it's right here on Judas, and right here on Self-Titled. Both amazing albums. I recently overheard Mr. Hall of Fame say, I put him in the mood for Grand Funk. Or I made him think of Grand Funk. And Brandon, that's probably because I've shown it before and I love the band. This was the album you pulled out to listen to. And I'm Your Captain. Oh man, I mean, Grand Funk, Shea Stadium, I'm Your Captain. Whoa. Whoa, 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 wow. Gimme Shelter closed out Grand Funk's one of their albums, Survival, which is a great song, but I Can Hear Him in the Morning was great off that, but that wasn't the closing track. Here, I'm Your Captain closes this album and says, I want more Grand Funk. Foghat, same thing with Gotta Get to Know You. It's not my favorite song here, but this album is absolutely amazing. It's a 10 all day long. Sarah Lee is actually my favorite song off this album. But Gotta Get to Know You, after you've come through I Just Want to Make Love to You, which is all radio beat up, Sarah Lee, Highway, Killing Me, Maybelline, A Hole to Hide, and then you get to Gotta Get to Know You. It's, again, play me again, play this record again, is what that last song says. Now, in my opinion, this is the one band I found out of all of these that knows how to put a closing song on an album. Almost without fail, every one. I was like, what's the last song on that? Oh yeah, what's the last song? Oh my god. It was The Doors. Closing this with, and I believe you showed this as well, Bret, Riders on the Storm, LA Woman. No more to say. And then take a look at the Soft Parade, and it ends with Soft Parade, which is, I mean, just perfect. That song is unbelievable. I've loved that song since I was a little kid. And also here, the end. What more do I need to say about the end? And again, this is another one of those that I gotta challenge you to find a mono copy, because the mono copy definitively sounds different than the stereo press. It's just the way it was mixed, you know, it's like the Beatles, Rolling Stones kind of thing. The way it was mixed, very different. I've become comfortably numb. There is no mono copy of The Wall. Anyways, I only have a couple left here. Here is Alice Cooper's Constrictor, which ends with He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask. Heavy metal, horror, match made in heaven. And that song is epic. Absolutely epic. Never to be ignored. Never to be ignored is Rock and Roll Suicide, which closes out Ziggy Stardust and the Spider from Mars. An unbelievable album, unbelievable song. And the last one I pulled, and it's because I had to stop, Accept, Metal Heart, Bound to Fail. This album is full of amazing tracks from Accept, but Bound to Fail has just about everything going for it. From sound effects to great music to, I don't want to say great lyrics, I've never really broken it down lyrical, but just the way it works as a song, as a closer to this album, or even just as an Accept song or single in general. It may have ended up being the last track by accident. Bound to Fail is awesome. That is my response to your thread, Bret, and it's one I chose to do because it was a great question and I was glad to do it. What I'm not looking forward to is putting all that shit away. So I hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy VC. I hope everyone's doing well. And before I go, I want to say a big thank you to all the new subscribers that have come on board in the last couple of weeks. Welcome aboard if you chose to subscribe. I hope you're enjoying what you're watching, and I welcome you all to leave a comment. Take care, everyone. Talk to you soon.